Hey there, it's Ashley Stahl here, counterterrorism professional turned career and business coach, and I am here for those moments when you look in the mirror and you realize it's time to make some sort of radical change or U-turn in your life so that you can stop operating on cruise control and start living your life on purpose. So join me here on the U-Turn podcast every single week, where you're going to be hearing from inspiring, insightful guests, be it CEOs, spiritual leaders, love experts, or of course, yours truly, so that you can become your very best self without having to take life so seriously. And don't forget, if you head on over to uturnpodcast.com, that's YOUTURN podcast.com, you're going to get access to show notes, which have books and resources mentioned by our guests, as well as access to one of my 4 free e-courses over at uturnpodcast.com. Whether you want to land a new job you love, get clarity on the best career path for you, launch that dream business, or deepen your romantic relationships. Whew, okay, enough about me. Let's get this party started with this week's guest. This episode is brought to you by Cake Publishing, ghostwriting, publicity, and copywriting house, there to help influencers and entrepreneurs get their voice out there in a much bigger way. If you're ready to make a bigger impact, head on over to cakepublishing.com. That's CAKE publishing.com. Everybody, it's Ashley Stahl here, your lovely host, and I am here with a friend and an inspiration, Evan Marc Katz. He is a dating coach for strong, successful women, and he is here to really help you up-level who you are when it comes to your relationships, being more intentional and getting more clear on when you should stay, when you should go, and how to confidently take action, whichever is best for you. Evan, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's delightful. And what a beautiful, heavenly apartment that we're recording this in.
I invited Evan over to my place to do this, so it's extra fun versus on Skype. So
she got the furry chair.
Yeah, I got the fairy chair. So talk to me. What do you think got you into this in the first place?
I think I'm almost inclined to redirect that question to you, right? How did you know? It's the same question for most people who give advice. Usually, you were seeking something. It was hard. You learned something along the way, and then you reverse engineer what you learned to try to share it with other people.
Yeah.
And so I was a kid who always wanted to be like my dad. My parents were married for 30 years, and dating was rough. I mean, it's rough for everybody, but it was definitely rough for me in my 20s in Los Angeles, where I was in Hollywood and I had no money, and a lot of trial and error in the beginning of online dating and prolific online dating. And after I crapped out of Hollywood, which is another interesting separate story, I had to figure out something else to do, and I got a job while I was in film school. I was going to be a professor and teach screenwriting. I was at UCLA. I got a job answering phones at JDate in Beverly Hills, and after 9 months of answering phones for other people in customer service, getting yelled at by strangers, I was like, oh my God, I got to write a book about this, because I was a writer. There are people who are like psychologists who write books. I'm a writer who just happens to write about dating and relationships, and that was 2003. And a book about online dating did well, and then suddenly, Time Magazine and CNN, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll drop out of film school.
I got a little talent here.
I'll be the dating guy, and I'll see where that goes. And 15 years later, I've written, 4 more books and created a whole bunch of other stuff. And when I started, I certainly was nothing resembling an expert. I mean, my first interview on TV, she was like, who the hell are you? I was Kira Phillips on CNN.
Been there.
Who the hell are you to give anybody advice? And I was like, I am not here to tell you how to have a happy relationship, but I could tell you how to get a date online like nobody's business.
Yeah.
But years and years later, I by reading, coaching, studying, I used the advice I was giving to other people, applied it to myself, have been now married for 10 years. And looking back, I was like, it's really interesting to see your evolution and how one can grow and evolve and get better at their job and change their mind on certain things. So I feel like as a 45-year-old married guy, it's very different than being the 31-year-old single guy giving advice.
Yeah.
But I
equally beneficial.
Different.
Yeah.
Different. I think when you're playing out of your depth, I don't pretend to be a psychologist. If you've had childhood trauma, I'm not your guy. If you are struggling as a smart, strong, successful woman with dating and choosing a compatible man, I could help you find that guy.
Yeah, I have no doubt. And Those of you who don't know, I found Evan because I remember asking him to be on this podcast because at one point or another, at 3 a.m, in a bout of anxiety, I found one of his blog posts. He's had up to 10 million unique views on his blog in a given year. So the guy obviously knows what he's talking about here.
Or he just writes a lot.
And you just can't help but avoid him.
Exactly.
You know, you just can't help it.
You Google anything, you'll end up on my website.
That's good. You're everywhere. Good marketing. I'm curious to ask you, like, I think I read somewhere it's 1 out of 5 women are finding the one on the internet. Is that true?
I've heard it's actually 1/3 of women, and about half of those are from conventional online dating. The others, there's Instagram and Facebook, and there's other social ways. But conventional online dating sites account for probably about 20%.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things where it's ubiquitous. My first book was called "I Can't Believe I'm Buying This Book" because it was embarrassing. I mean, that was the joke is, no one could believe they were doing this. Yeah. It used to be old magazine personals, and now it's gone to the other end of the spectrum. Now it's all apps where they've removed profiles, they've removed email, and it's cute pictures, swipe right, text, meet. Mm-hmm. So we've removed all the friction from it, but I think made the process kind of worse.
Yeah. Actually, my grandma, she put herself in a newspaper ad and found her partner in life there years ago. So I guess it's just the modern take on it. It's
it makes sense from a technological standpoint of where we're at.
Yeah.
If everybody has a computer, everybody has a phone. It's too easy not to, but there's a problem when there's instant gratification.
Yeah.
In anything in life, if you get instant gratification, you're not going to appreciate what you have.
Yeah.
And so I think there's value to some level of old school courtship that has to be kind of glossed and modernized for millennials. I think there's a way to do it that doesn't have to ruin your fun. But I did a TED Talk about this.
Yes.
And the truth is, if you swipe right on 10 guys and you're texting 10 guys at the same time, and he's doing the same thing, everybody's disposable.
Yes.
Right? Contrast it to a feeling that most of us still have from time to time. You meet someone in real life, you have a great conversation, you exchange phone numbers. Like, you're really excited about that.
Yes.
That's a completely different category than I've got a harem of men on my phone that I could pick and choose at any given time, and I don't feel obliged to write back to any of them, and I can let them wait for a week and then be, oh, sorry, I got busy last week.
It's like, what?
When you treat everybody as disposable, they are disposable, and it changes the interaction.
Yeah.
As opposed to, we made a connection, let's see where the connection leads.
It's so funny, Evan, I just can't help but laugh. I haven't managed to tell you this, but funny enough, the first time I ever tried dating online, because I was in a long relationship, I called off my wedding. I remember having my first stab at online dating, and I got my first match. And I thought there was like a big meaning to it. I'm like, wow, we matched! And I was so excited. I thought the algorithm has climbed a mountain to find my match. And so I remember inboxing the person, he never wrote back. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a rough road. And I've taken a bit of a break since then. But one thing we kind of talked about was men versus women and communication. So I think this can translate both in dating, also just in day-to-day life. What would you say are the fundamental differences that you could take with you in your career when you're talking to men, and you could take with you in your relationship?
Gosh, there's a lot. It's a huge can of worms that you just opened.
I got more places to take you. So
When it comes to online dating, because we were just there, so we'll close that loop. Men look for speed in general, and women are more likely to look for comfort. For obvious reasons. A man just wants to meet you in person, see if there's chemistry, see if he could hook up as quickly as he can with the minimal of time and energy and friction and money. Where women have to worry about their safety. I don't want to just go out with a stranger who said, what's up, let's meet, come to my house. Well, beware of that. So men don't want to put in much energy, and women have to deal with the consequences of men who, if they do this to enough women, eventually someone says yes. It's like sort of a lowest common denominator approach.
Yes.
And so expecting that not to be true, right? I'm not saying it's good or bad or otherwise. In fact, I generally think it's bad that men move so fast.
Yeah.
Women have to understand that a guy is going to want to move at lightning speed, and your job is to actually slow him down and make it fun for him to slow down. And there's something magical about that.
But then there's also a lot of the casual dating where it's like, you know, they want to take it really slow, or is that just the non-committed, non-interested guy?
These things all speak for themselves.
Yeah.
In my Love You course, I've got like a relationship timeline. Here's what you should expect. Here's what's healthy. And in general, there's two ways that guys choose a girlfriend, and I think most of us have experienced it. It's the instant thing. Oh my God, we went on our first date. There's such chemistry. Let's just dive in, and you have a boyfriend that you may have met twice, but he's now your boyfriend.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily smart, but people do it all the time.
Yeah.
The other way that's I think is a little healthier is kicking the tires for 4 to 6 weeks, not 5 months. But
I kicked the tire for 5 months. Evan was just pointing that one out.
Didn't. That was just for you. So the organic, you know, if you're not positive that someone is the one, and again, you shouldn't be. That's just chemistry and lust. If you're not positive, what you do is date someone. You call him, you know, text him every once in a while, call him every few days, see him once or twice a week. Now, you're not going to dive into a relationship if you're not sure, but in the process of what men do, which is pursuing sex. Yeah. In the process of pursuing sex, men realize, oh, she's really cool too. Okay. I like her.
What about that?
I'm not just trying to get laid. I actually like her too. And then something switches in his head, and then he starts to consider you as girlfriend potential. And he usually wants to claim you so no one else can have you sometime in around the 1 month mark.
Okay.
Pretty reliably and predictably. If a guy's not doing that, if you're the once a week text girl, 3 months in, he doesn't want to be your boyfriend. He already would have been if he wanted to be your boyfriend. So the healthy thing for women to do is kick guys to the curb 6 to 8 weeks in. If, hey, it's been really fun getting to know you. You're a great guy, but I'm looking for a serious relationship, and evidently, you know, this isn't it. So take care. Good luck. Yes. Cutting those guys off instead of sleeping with men and continuing the folly of dating. Yes. It's not dating if you're texting a guy once or twice a week. That's not dating. Dating is him making you a priority to see you, and it has to escalate. It may start off once a week, but it's got to go up. Yeah. And if it's not, it's stagnating.
Yeah. And, you know, a lot of friends, you know, they talk about finding the right person, and I know that there's not necessarily one right person. There's many right people. At least that's what I think. But what I constantly hear from them is, or what I'm telling them is, it's not about finding the right person. I think it's about just saying no to the wrong ones so you have space for the right ones. And I just can't even imagine what so many friends' lives would look like if they just cut the string and stood in their empowerment. So I guess this kind of brings me to another question, which is, outside of the timeline, let's say you're with somebody, you're in a relationship with them. How do you know when you should stay and when you should go? How do you connect to yourself and figure out what's best for you?
There are so many things that motivate people subconsciously. Yeah. Right. I did some video on 6 reasons women stay in the wrong relationships for too long, or something to that effect. And there's sunk costs, and there's fear of being alone, and then there's the relationship that's good, but that's not great. There's treating him like he's the last guy on earth, and that you can't do better. So there's all these irrational things that run through our mind, but they're all based in the same place. If you're in a relationship that is not making you happy and is producing a level of anxiety, you have to ask yourself, what's the point of preserving the relationship? Yes. And I can't tell you how many women. I have one client that I think of in particular. She was with her boyfriend for 7 years, from 34 to 41, waiting for a wedding ring, waiting for a proposal so they can get married and start a family. And she squandered that entire time on a guy who wasn't even a good boyfriend, who didn't even live in the same city, who was critical and difficult and made her feel bad. Mm-hmm. And all she could turn to me, her dating coach, was, how could I get him to propose to me? And I said, all right, so you get your proposal. You're happy? Yeah. And she it almost like it never even occurred to her. It was like she was just so laser focused on achieving the goal. Yeah. If I love him, and if I get him to marry me, I'll be happy. But you're not actually happy in the relationship. Yeah. The relationship is producing anxiety. Yes. So to me, it becomes very simple. I've got the webinar for my Love You course. Really, it talks about the same concept. Is the way you know you're in a bad relationship, the way is that it makes you unhappy. It sounds stupid.
Yeah, but it's common sense.
Yes. If you're not happy, and you could like, a friend of mine created something called the boyfriend log. It's a little app you could download on your phone. You color code, here's how I feel about my boyfriend today. Red, yellow, green. And if you look at your relationship on your phone, and you have 30 days and 27 of them are red.
Oof.
Maybe this
stop sign right there.
Maybe this boyfriend isn't exactly what you thought he would be. So we just have to get in touch with our hearts, because I could give you a whole bunch of cerebral things to determine chemistry and compatibility and give you cool metaphors and paradigms to look at it through, but it comes down to something that is, I hate the concept, heart-centered.
Yeah.
Does this guy make me happy, or does he produce anxiety?
Mm-hmm.
Am I walking on eggshells? Am I afraid to speak my mind? Do I always get the sense he's going to leave? If we have a disagreement, do I feel like it's just going to derail the whole thing? Because unconditional love is easy.
Yes.
And that's the thing that most people don't understand because they haven't experienced it.
Yeah.
So it's a real paradigm shift from relationships take work
so they can be grace
to yes, think about your relationship with your best girlfriend or your mom or your sister. Like, what is the easiest relationship where you let down your guard, you don't have to worry about what you say, and no matter how much you guys go out at a given time, immediately you get back to where you were. That's what marriage should look like. And people marry people who are wrong for them, and then they come up with, after the fact, relationships take work. Well, yeah, the wrong relationship takes a lot of work.
And people are very committed to work. I think that there's a belief system there that it should be work, and it comes through society. I mean, how many times do we hear relationships take work?
Yes.
Love is hard. And yes, it takes effort, but I don't know if it necessarily
That's the right word.
Yeah.
When people push back against this concept, they're like, are you saying this relationships are... It's like, no, it's a garden. You have to water the garden.
Yes.
Right? You have to put an effort. And you do job stuff.
Yeah.
Right? No job's going to be perfect, but hopefully it's 80% fun and 20% drudgery. If that balance tips too far on the other end, this might not be a good long-term fit for you.
Yeah.
And that's not an attack on the job or you. It's just, let's just call the spade spade.
Yeah.
So I really believe in the concept of the easy relationship, and when you have two people who are equally committed to the relationship, and it just becomes a positive feedback loop. It's not hard to sustain.
Yes.
It's when one person feels that they're the giver and the other person's the taker.
Yes.
Because I work with women, I hear that all the time, and I just tell women, you gotta marry a giver.
Yeah.
You need two givers in a relationship. If you have one taker, it's broken.
Yeah. And I would also just venture to ask you, I mean, let's say there is a phase in a relationship where they're under some sort of stress. So maybe that you have a nice relationship, but you're just going through something. How do you connect to yourself to be able to kind of look at, okay, are these red flags? Is this the wrong person for me? Or are we just in a phase that we need to work through?
I like to think of it, I like to look at it through a pretty rational lens rather than an emotional lens, because emotions could kind of cloud our reason.
Yeah.
We're looking for the difference between circumstances and character, right? There's, we both do internet marketing of some degree. Once in a while, I'll have a product launch. That's a devil of a time, and I might, there might be, a month where I'm working, late instead of getting out at 5:30 to play with my kids.
Yeah.
Right. I don't love that. It's not what I'm committed to. Anybody who knows me knows that I really value work-life balance. I would rather be a good husband and father than be the world's richest man. So, for those few weeks when I'm out of commission, I don't get to see my wife and kids as much. I don't like it, but everybody understands that it's circumstantial.
Yeah.
It's very different than the guy who says, honey, I'm running this, big multinational corporation, and the demands of my work are that I have to work 60 hours a week and travel 20 weeks a year, and I'll take you on vacation once a year, but that's pretty much all I got. Doesn't mean he's a bad guy, but he's not a great partner.
Yeah.
People overestimate how much happiness they're going to get when they marry a guy who appears to be a catch, when in fact the best predictors of a happy relationship, get ready for this.
I'm so into this.
Whether he's sensitive to your emotional cues,
okay,
and whether he helps out with housework and child rearing.
Mm.
Nobody's ever gone.
How do you know if they're going to do that? Because they're, number one, sensitive to your emotional cues.
They're kind of intertwined. But my point is, no one has ever gone on Tinder and looked for a guy's profile who says sensitive to your emotional cues, helps out with housework and child rearing.
Yeah.
You're looking for tall, hot, smart, rich,
funny.
Something.
All
like
the
whatever you could ascertain from profile or from a first date.
Yeah.
There's virtually no indicator that makes a man a good husband. So we distinguish between what is attractive. Right? Here's what I'm attracted to, and what is important. And important is how he treats you. Attractive is just what gets you in the door.
This is a really wonderful distinction: attractive versus important.
Yes. So we're not saying that attractive things aren't important. If you don't have attraction, there's no relationship. If you don't have a good sex life, there's no relationship.
Yeah.
At the same time, attraction has so little to do with whether you're going to be happy for 40 years. What does? Is he sensitive to your emotional cues? Does he help out with housework and child rearing? Or do you feel like, oh, I've got a husband who kind of just goes his own way, he makes his money, he turns on TV when he gets home, and he doesn't want to listen to what I have to say, and he doesn't want to help out, he doesn't want to compromise. And
many people are
women marry men because they're attracted to what he represents. And I just had a potential client on the phone the other day. Hopefully she's not listening to this. She's mid-30s, doctor, Japanese, and she was asking me about compatibility.
Yes.
And she was saying something to the effect of, so, I think compatibility is finding someone who's, around your age and a similar background, also educated. I was like, that is zero to do with compatibility.
What is that?
What is
that? Just like a list, like you?
Those are things that you have in common.
Features.
What you have in common has nothing to do with compatibility. Compatibility is how you work as a couple. Compatibility, we could look at on a number of metrics. We could talk about the 5 love languages. We could talk about masculine or feminine energy. We could talk about whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, or how you spend money, or whether you have kids and how you raise kids. Or those are the things that determine whether couples make it.
Yeah.
But there's no indication that if I you hand me another 45-year-old Jewish atheist East Coast liberal, that we're going to be a better couple than me and my wife.
Yeah.
Who's none of those.
Yeah.
Right? Those are just things that we have in common. But compatibility is really how well does the machine work.
Yeah.
Right? Not how does it look. Are they mirror images of each other? So people try to marry their clones. What they really need to do is marry their complements. And that's hard.
And you've written, one of the blog posts that I did find on you that I loved was around chemistry versus compatibility. So what can you say for women, whether they're in a relationship or they're dating, about how to discern between do we just have a lot of chemistry, or are we actually compatible?
You and me?
Oh, God.
So chemistry is, think about it, is brain chemistry. It's norepinephrine, serotonin, dopamine, pheromones coursing through your brain. Lights up the same pleasure centers of your brain as coke or meth. Right? So
those of us who are really addicted to something, we're like coked out on
So
them.
when someone is saying, I'm in love, they use that.
They're on coke.
Yep.
Ah!
High highs, low lows. Oh my God, he called. I can't stop thinking about him. He didn't text me for 3 hours. I'm going to kill myself.
Oh, God.
That's the roller coaster of what people call love. It's not really love. That's what people call love. It's essentially lust individualized to one person. We generally call it the attraction phase. But attraction doesn't account for what happens in 40 years. That's attachment, right? And so what gets us into a relationship, again, is not what sustains the relationship. And we have to be able to understand those two and separate those two. Again, it's not that attraction doesn't matter. It's that two people who are attracted to each other do not necessarily have a better relationship than people who are slightly less attracted to each other, but get along a million times better.
Yeah.
And in fact, they might even have a converse relationship. Think about the person, and it's a challenge to anybody who's listening. Yeah. Think about the person on the planet in your 30 years that you have the most attraction to. How'd that relationship end?
In flames.
Don't know a single person who has a different answer to that question.
No way.
I don't know.
Okay, well, you have coached a lot of women, so I'm about to take that.
Well, I understand. It's a question that answers itself. Yeah. You don't turn to a dating coach if you're happily married.
Yeah.
Right.
Confounding variable.
So to be fair.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think we've all had the experience of being, physically intoxicated by someone else who didn't reciprocate the interest, or had a flaming hot affair that burned out really quickly, got into the relationship because it felt so right, and then realized, oh my God, this is broken, but you stayed for 2 years anyway because it felt so good at a certain time that you held on. Chemistry is not a predictor of your future. Chemistry is just the predictor of chemistry. And so when I was telling you...
Sure fun, though. Chemistry feels
no
so
one,
good.
No one's arguing. Again, I'm sure heroin's great, too.
Gotta fall in love with that cocoa.
Right? So I told the client yesterday, because she's caught up in the societal myth that it's all about chemistry. And I pointed out to her that none of her chemistry experience have worked in 36 years.
Yeah.
And furthermore, chemistry wears off.
Yeah.
Right. It's habituation. So you buy a new car, you're really excited about your new car, you look at your new driveway, you take the top down, you really have a great time driving it, and it's really exciting. And then eventually it's just the thing that gets you from point A to point B. And that goes for new houses and new jobs and new shoes and new everything. It's habituation. Beginning it's exciting, then we get used to it.
Yeah.
Relationships are the same way. So a 9 out of 10 in chemistry might be really seductive, right? But eventually that 9 sinks down to a 6 or a 7.
Yeah, you see the food in their teeth.
In 10 years,
they get a little stomach flu.
Something.
Yeah,
you get down to reality, and you better have a 10 compatibility. So my formula, if there's a formula, 7 chemistry, 10 compatibility is a really, really nice life. But if you chase 10 chemistry, because you won't settle, get used to a lot of 3 compatibility. A lot of passion and a lot of friction.
Oh, God. Sounds so exhausting. Sounds like an illness.
But people are addicted to it, and they think that somewhere out there, if they try hard enough, they're going to find the 10 chemistry and the 10 compatibility, and I have yet to see that.
That is so helpful to hear. I also am curious, on your side, what are some fundamental red flags that anybody's listening in their relationship, in their dating life, maybe they're just casually dating, whatever it is, to just kind of pay attention to? Because I think a lot of us talk ourselves out of our red flags, and it's like we negotiate with our non-negotiables. I'm guessing there's some universal truths that you've accessed here.
The shorthand on that, right? The real shorthand is your gut, right?
Okay.
Again, it's not a sexy thing.
I love that.
Right? The real shorthand is, how do I feel?
Yes.
Do I feel relaxed? Do I feel safe? Do I feel heard and understood? Do I feel like I could build the foundation of my entire life on this man?
Yeah.
I'm talking to women. Can I do that? Because if you can't, what is the point of spending one more day with a guy where you feel like you got to check his phone?
Yeah.
Right? You either have full trust or no trust, and if you can't realize this is your everything.
Yeah.
Right? If you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Your marriage is your everything. Right? It is the foundation of your life. Right? That has to be solid as a rock.
Yeah.
So, attractive, tall, dark, handsome, funny, brilliant, creative, charismatic, whatever.
Yeah.
We know what we're attracted to. And again, that's great. No one's saying those are bad qualities. I'm just saying they're limited.
Yes.
Communication, consistency, kindness, character, commitment. Those are the non-negotiables.
Okay. And what about when...
And so I could give you... Right, Top Chef, supermodel, Rhodes Scholar, right?
Yeah.
Ballroom dancer, tantric sex god.
Yeah.
I never want to get married.
I have friends that are all of those. I have a tantric sex expert friend.
I'll bet you do.
I have a supermodel client for Victoria's Secret, and they're all definitely not the tantric expert, but the supermodel's complete identity crisis. So not all things are what they seem.
But the greater point is you could get them all in one package.
Yeah.
With that man or woman, I don't want to commit.
Yes.
Well, the whole deal's off.
Sounds about right.
Everything in one package, not an honest person.
Yeah.
Everything in one package, not really selfless or giving or interested in compromise, want to do everything their way. So you can get everything on your wish list and still be miserable.
Yes. And you know what's so interesting with that is when something ends over that one thing, people usually
there's so much good.
It was so right.
Yes.
And even in my own life, I'm looking at my circumstances and I'm listening to you, and it's like, yeah, but saying like, this guy was amazing, except when he had his little anger problem every few weeks.
Yes.
It's like, well, what you're really saying...
He's great except he's a wife beater.
Yes.
He's great except he steals money. He's great except he has a coke habit.
Or it could be even more nuanced. He's great except for he's mean to his mom, and it kind of shows up with me.
That's when we get into things that become negotiable. I'm not going to say what's good or bad, but the real question is not whether I like it, because you're not going to like everything about your partner. If you have a criticism of your partner, it's probably a valid criticism. Anything my wife could say about me, completely valid criticism. For her, the good far outweighs the bad, so it's not the criticism of whatever is wrong with me is untrue. It's I'm willing to deal with this. And I think we think that relationships are exceptional.
Yeah.
We think they should be perfect, but we make compromises for our work. We make compromises where we live. I don't know a single person who doesn't make a compromise for work. I work alone. I'm a people person. That's a compromise, right? Yeah. Some people have to do. I've got a buddy who's got a long commute. He drives down to Torrance. That's a compromise. He's really well compensated for it. I know people who have glass ceilings. I know people that aren't as creative as they like. I know people who don't necessarily like their boss, but they like the rest of their coworkers. So we make compromises all the time for things. We think this is the one place we shouldn't compromise. Mm-hmm. And when we do compromise, we're compromising on the wrong things. Mm. We won't compromise on him being 5'9" versus 5'10", but we will compromise on him being nice.
Yeah, isn't that so true? So at least he's hot, but it's a little bit rude.
So we tend to compromise on the wrong qualities, where if we learn to compromise on the right qualities, which is the things that people think are compatible. Height, weight, age, education, income, right? Yeah. Those are the things you do compromise on. Yeah. Right? You don't compromise on consistency, kindness, communication, character, commitment. Yeah. And that is a shift, because we're so driven by attraction that it tends to blur our thinking to what's really, really important in the long run. So I don't know, we can make metaphors all day long, but it's the gorgeous car that stalls out on the freeway. Who cares how nice it looks if it only works 75% of the time that you're driving it?
Yeah, because it's a real bummer when it's not moving. Yes. I have a question about that too, is listening to yourself. So you talked about your gut and your instincts, and I think that sometimes one of the biggest, especially in my private practice, it's like people struggle between when is it fear and it's your own work you need to do on yourself, and when is it instinct where it's really a friendly whisper helping you make decisions for yourself. How do you work with that?
That's a really good question, because it resists an easy answer. Yeah. So, everything I've been saying for 15 years, I could kind of rattle it off. I want to think about this one and try to answer it appropriately. I think when you're in the self-help business, you have to do two things simultaneously that sound like they contradict each other. You've heard the idea, the ability to hold two contradictory ideas in your head at the same time. So one of them is the ability to look in the mirror, take responsibility, and own your piece in how you're the common denominator in your life. Yes. Right? One has to be able to do that, or there'll never be change. Otherwise, you're just assigning, it's LA, it's Tinder, it's men, right? You can always blame someone else. And so
identifying patterns, perhaps.
Yeah. So a piece of the puzzle that one has to own, and I'll give you a good catchy tip for that. The other piece is you gotta be kind to yourself. Yeah. Right? And sometimes, we've talked about this actually in reference to my business personally, and probably even in reference to your love life. Yeah. Sometimes it's circumstances that have almost nothing to do with you. Shit happens. Yes. Right?
But it wasn't for you. If something leaves you, or if you're having a struggle.
But that's the point. Is the last page of my book, Why He Disappeared, is essentially
what
the punchline.
What a solid title.
Yeah. Well, if you want to know why he disappeared, and I could give you 133 pages of reasons why he disappeared. At the end of the day, if you didn't do anything wrong, in quotes, then it has nothing to do with you. He's just not the right guy. By virtue of the fact that he doesn't want to be your future husband, it doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. If I didn't propose to my wife, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and I was really agonizing about it, right, I made a choice. It turned out to be a great choice. But if I said, you know what, you're wonderful, we had a great 16 months together, I can't get over the fact that I'm just the world's pickiest person, so I want to date someone just like you, but 5 years younger, so we have time to have 2 kids. I proposed to her when she was 38. Yeah. Would that have meant that I'm a terrible person? No. Would that have meant that she did anything wrong? No. It would have just meant that,
it is what it is.
It is what it is.
The business of the isn't.
But there's nothing. Again, that's just a personal story. But there's nothing wrong necessarily. Yeah. If you've done nothing wrong, you can't beat yourself up about it. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think we have to have both of those things at the same time. Self-awareness and personal responsibility for things that we can do better, either in terms of being a more confident, better communicator, better judgment, better ways of handling things in dating and relationships with men. Yeah. Right? And at the same time, we have to be kind to ourselves, because sometimes you just back the wrong horse. Yes. And it doesn't work out, and there's not much to learn beyond, okay, that happened, next, instead of giving up on yourself dating relationships and men, and internalizing yourself as a failure when things can go wrong, but it doesn't even mean that anybody failed.
Yeah.
So I just, while it's in my head, I want to circle back to it. I listen to a lot of women, and they talk about how they attract the wrong kind of guys.
Yes.
You've heard that.
Emotionally unavailable men, people that don't want to commit. What is that about?
So here's
the pattern, right?
But here's the shift.
Yeah.
You don't attract the wrong men. Right? Anybody who says they attract the wrong men is not being honest with himself. Right? But it's the most common and easy thing in the world to say.
Tell
right?
me.
I figured this out when I was single years and years ago. And I remember telling a girlfriend about all my crazy dating stories. She's like, "Oh my God, you really love drama. You must really love drama." And I started to think about this. I was like, I don't love drama at all.
Yeah.
Right? If I were to give a man dating advice, start with the happiest, sanest person you know, and work backwards from there. Like, just no drama is ideal. But I did have a lot of crazy stories, and so I realized I wasn't attracted to drama. I put up with drama. That's different. So if I'm attracted to women, all sorts of women, if I'm attracted to 100 women, right, the ones that make for the best stories are the drama ones. But that's not necessarily, I'm not like a magnet for crazy. Right? I chose over and over crazy. So here's the reframe for anybody. You don't attract the wrong man. You accept the wrong man. There are other women who will date that guy who seems emotionally unavailable, and 1-2 dates in, they're like, "Hey, buddy, best of luck to you."
Yeah.
And there's women who double down on that guy, the guy who says, "I'm not looking for anything serious right now," and she stays for a year, and then is devastated 1 year in when she's like, "So where's this relationship going?" And he says, "I told you when we first met that I wasn't looking for anything serious." Right? That's not, I'm a magnet for emotionally unavailable men. It means I drove through the yellow tape and the orange cones, and I just ignored the part, right? I say believe the negatives, ignore the positives.
Yeah.
So people who put up with the wrong men, right, double down on the wrong men, they're making that choice not once, they're making that choice every day.
Yes. To
be with the wrong man. That is not a magnet inside of you. Other people have the ability to say, next.
Yeah.
Right? And so let's not blame the universe. Let's not blame men. That's where we take responsibility for our choices.
Yeah, I think the spiritual stuff can kind of, and I love spirituality, but I think it can get kind of messy because sometimes the mindset of spirituality is that, you do the work to ascend and you're going to be better if it's difficult, and through the struggle you're going to be greater. So there's some of that. There's also law of attraction, and what you're putting out there is creating it, or hold a vision of this person changing. But
I will mostly bite my lip on that.
Yeah, I know.
No, but I think that the value of the law of attraction in relation to dating is this: if thinking positive makes you a happier, more pleasant person to be around, it can only positively impact the way you relate to other people.
Yes. Yes.
So I don't necessarily believe the universe has a plan for your love life, but I do believe that certainly both men and women like hanging out with happy, optimistic, positive people.
Yes.
So that in that regard, I think it works.
And kind of going back what we talked about, just for everybody who's listening, because I asked you, how do you figure out fear versus instinct? And I think what I gathered from what you said was, it's about patterns. It's about noticing, like, does this keep happening to me? Because then you're your common denominator. So I think anybody who's listening, maybe you want to examine your past 5 relationships, or even the relationship you're in, and is there a pattern that keeps coming up in that relationship that you're the common denominator? And then secondly, do you have anything to say about that?
No, it's good. I mean, I'm thinking of an exercise that I have in my Love You course that does that very thing.
Oh,
where
wonderful.
you have to, you reframe your past, you let go of your limiting beliefs about love. And I think that's a big obstacle for people. People believe there's no good men out there, or men are only after one thing, or there's something wrong with me, or online dating is the worst. Married people are actually really miserable, and I don't want to be one of them because my parents were miserable. I had a bad marriage, and so we have all these stories that have a basis in truth and are partially true, but they're not totally true.
Yeah.
Right? And so we have to carve ourselves. It doesn't matter what the rest of the world is doing. It doesn't matter if the rest of the world is hooking up and miserable on Tinder or is suffering through a bad marriage. We have choices to do better. You can get everything that you want. That's not fantasy land.
Yes, right? And it's also about just paying attention to the meaning that you're making of your experiences. I mean, so many people, they date one awful guy and they make an entire meeting about the entire gender, and it's like...
I say you have a bad meal, you don't go on a hunger strike.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that. That's great. I'm going to use that. But back to instinct, I've done some study on this, and I love what you said about, red flags, and you didn't list off a bunch of red flags like religiously incompatible and politics, but instead you just said it's your gut. And in the Buddhist tradition, I read that they think your soulmate or your right person isn't going to give you butterflies, they're going to feel like ease. And I think that's very validating to hear. Yeah, I really love that. And I think that it comes down to patterns as well. It's like, do people always find themselves in situations without ease? Kind of like what you're saying. You kept having drama. What was that about? You accepted that.
I use all these metaphors that overlap and may contradict each other, but I like the Cinderella slipper metaphor. You put your foot in the shoe. It either fits or it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Right? If it fits, it's perfect. That's it. You're happy for the rest of your life. If it doesn't fit, you don't spend 2 years trying to jam your foot in the shoe.
Yes.
And you don't get angry at your foot, and you don't give up on shoes.
Yeah.
You just keep on trying on shoes until one fits perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, what a good relationship is. It's a perfect fit. It may or may not be the most expensive shoe, the most gorgeous shoe. It's just the one that fits right. And we're often loath to want to embrace that philosophy because no one wants to ever acknowledge that there's any compromises when it comes to love. People, the concept of compromise is so anathema that you get your head bit off for even suggesting it.
Yeah.
For suggesting that my wife compromised to be with me or that I compromised to be with her. It's like it's an insult. But it's not. It's like if we're going to be part of the reality-based community, we have to be able to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? My wife dated a 6'7" guy before me. I'm 5'9". If she wanted tall, she struck out.
Yeah.
I'd like to think she got some other qualities.
Yeah, she totally did. Well, and kind of going back to instinct, I think what I've found for me in personal development is that it's not a fear-based whisper inside of you. It's not trying to scare you. Usually I think instinct sounds a little more like this is right or this is wrong. This feels good. This feels bad. It's really quite simple.
I think of the lack of anxiety.
Yeah.
I think you don't always know when someone's right, but I think you do know when something's wrong, and you have to listen to that.
And a lot of anxiety is such a messenger for that. When there's an incongruence, your body is just putting it straight at you.
Yes. So I think people who are expecting something written across the stars or light bulbs over your head and the butterfly feeling are using the wrong metric, because butterflies are not a great indicator of the future. So I don't think you know when someone's right. I think that's a choice. But I do think that there's many versions of knowing someone is wrong for you and ignoring them because you're afraid to admit that, we got to start all over. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to cut their losses and go to the back of the line again. And and so people double down on bad relationships.
Yes. And is there really such a thing as starting over? Because you're always ahead. You're always learning and I think growing.
Hopefully,
where you're not in the same place.
Hopefully every relationship is a growing experience where you learn what works for you. Relationships are a mirror, so you can't escape yourself. Your other person, your partner is going to deal with the worst of you, and you're going to see it reflected back at you, and you got to take stock of that.
Yeah, that's killer.
Right. So ultimately, I think what people need more than anything, and it's another underestimated thing, like the same as being sensitive to each other's emotional cues, is being accepted for all that you are.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times that I loved someone who said, "Evan, I love you, but you have to change this, and this."
Yeah.
And it was a non-starter. And again, it's not that their criticisms were wrong. It's that the person I end up marrying knows those things but doesn't harp on them.
Yeah.
It's a tacit acceptance
yes.
of someone instead of constantly trying to mold that person into being the person you want him to be. If your guy is not ambitious and you're ambitious, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like you can't constantly get on the case to get a better job.
And if you are upset about that, then maybe it's just not the person for you.
It may not be the person for you, but you also might be barking up the wrong tree.
Yes.
This is again another core concept that people tend to find challenging. It's probably useful when we're talking about love and money. the freedom of having money is that you don't need to date money. It's a thing that men figured out a very long time ago.
Yes.
Rupert Murdoch isn't like, I need another billionaire.
Yeah.
He says, no, I need someone who's 30 years younger and blonde. Right? That's what works for him.
Yeah.
Right? But he certainly doesn't need him, the female version of him.
Yeah.
And so a lot of women box themselves in by saying, I make $300,000. I need a man who makes $301,000. And you don't. Just like a man who makes $300,000 doesn't have any trouble marrying a high school English teacher who makes $50,000 and gets off at 4 and has a pension, and together they make $350,000 a year.
Yeah, money is a real topic.
And but gender becomes, if we're really equal, we have to kind of throw out some of the old stuff instead of keeping it, and that's hard because no one wants to let go of the old stuff.
Yeah,
women rightfully are equal opportunity, education, right? We're not there, but we're hopefully getting closer and closer and closer to that.
Yeah.
So the burden of that is that the gender roles get blurrier. So women are more traditionally masculine, and men are more traditionally feminine, passive. I don't know, what do you want to do? Right? Where the guy used to take the lead, make plans, do stuff. Right? You got guys like, hey, do you want to come over and hang out?
Yeah.
You got a lot of passive guys now, and these are some sort of societal shifts. And you got women who are just like, here's what we're going to do. I made plans for us and reservations on Saturday, and he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then women are complaining that they're not attracted to the guy.
Yeah.
But if the guy made plans, she'd be like, why'd you make plans there? Like, why didn't you ask me first? So we've talked about this before the podcast. You've got two people sitting in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Right? Someone has to be patient enough to ride shotgun. And it doesn't matter if it's the man or the woman. You just can't constantly battle for control. And that's why it's another factor in compatibility. Who's the type A and who's the type B? Who's the aggressive one and the opinionated one? Who's the one who's going to say, yes, dear?
Yeah.
And is more likely to want to get along.
Yeah.
Because if you have two type A's, it may be really attractive and hot, but it's bound to cause a lot of friction.
Yeah, I get that. And I also, just listening to you, I think that maybe somebody's listening to their gut right now and they're thinking, okay, my gut's telling me this isn't right, that this just doesn't feel right.
Usually.
How do you get the confidence to walk away? Is there some way that you recommend someone thinks about it or approaches it? Because it can be scary, and it totally dismantles your life when you build something with somebody. Or
I have a whole program around this. It's called Believe in Love.
Okay.
Right. It's when you feel like whatever you've done isn't work. You don't trust your own judgment. You don't believe that anything good is possible for you in the realm of dating and relationships. So there's plenty written about that. I don't want to go too deep into it. But one of the things that I find valuable is logic. And again, logic always loses to emotion, but I can't get away from it. Every second you're with the wrong man is a second you're not looking for the right man.
Yeah.
Period.
Yes.
So if this guy is not your future husband because you don't feel safe, he's not commitment oriented, you don't respect him, you don't trust him, he doesn't turn you on, whatever it is, if this is fundamentally a dead end, every second you're there, you're depriving yourself of the opportunity to find the guy that you're going to spend the rest of your life with.
Yep.
That is some serious opportunity cost.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing I accidentally did right in all the years I was single, is that I always got that principle. There are people who had my wife, 3 years, 7 years with different guys. Maybe like 1 month next, 3 months next. She's not going to be my wife next. It sounds really like cold.
No, it's just effective. It's self-honoring.
No, it's just, I don't see the point. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to her.
Yep. Right.
So it's the metaphor in Believe in Love. It's like poker. You don't have a hand that's worth playing. Fold.
Yeah.
You keep folding hands quickly, right? Until you have one that's worth playing. If you don't have a hand worth playing, why are you going all in on it?
Yeah.
Why are you doubling down? Why you can get engaged to a guy where if you got a ring on your finger, he hasn't made you happy for the greater part of a year and a half?
Yep.
So I don't think any of this is easy.
Yeah.
I do think that it's like a fork in the road. Double down on a mistake,
yeah.
Or get out and start over with the possibility of anything happening.
Yeah.
Is better than doubling down on a mistake.
And I think a lot of this comes down to a woman or a man or anyone just thinking about the beliefs that they're buying into that keeps them there. Because a lot of the times we're in a space of scarcity where we just think like there can't possibly be somebody better than this, and even though it sucks, I like my flavor of suckiness, and why go out and have the same thing? So I think when somebody feels this instinct, maybe it's helpful to consider just writing down, like, what are you believing about this that's keeping you in it? If you're not happy,
Yeah, there's a lot of, again, I brought it up earlier, the concept of treating a guy like he's the last man on earth.
Yes.
When he's not remotely the last man on earth. And you can do better. If you're unhappy, you can do better. Having nobody is better than having someone who makes you unhappy. A relationship is a cup that should be constantly filled. And if you have a person who's draining you, it's sucking your energy away. Going home is stressful.
Yes.
Right? Having conversations is stressful rather than fun. It's defeating the purpose of the relationship. It's not just to have someone. It should be have someone who lifts you. When I have a hard day at work, I get out and I'm like, hey, it's my wife and kids. Everything's really great. Like whatever happened in the office doesn't matter. This is always great.
Yes, that's so nice to hear. And, you've mentioned a lot of books, a lot of content. Like, what book that you've written or what content have you created or a course that you would just outright just recommend someone pick up right now if they're struggling with this?
It's like asking an artist their influences.
Exactly.
So I have a bibliography on my website. No, I'm saying I could recommend so many things that have informed or reinforced the things that I try to share. And for me, my signature course, the Everything You Need to Know About Dating, Relationships, Sex, and Men in One Place, is called Love You.
Uh-huh.
And it's a...
You like university,
yes,
everybody.
Love, the letter U. And it's...
we'll provide the link.
Yeah, it's like a half-hour video and an exercise and transcripts and audio. And every week we walk you through chronologically everything that you need to know. The first month is on confidence. Second month is on meeting men. Third month is on dating, understanding men, relationships, commitment. So you go through that, and it meets you almost exactly where you're at.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the neatest thing about the course. I tried to make it shorter. People love really short, quick fixes, but the truth is, it's a process. And you don't start on day one talking about compatibility because you're starting as a single person.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's the consolidation of everything that I've learned in 15 years of doing this, and that's the most comprehensive thing that I could offer that addresses all of these influences and cites other books. I got permission from authors to mention their books and use their exercises in there, and I'm super proud of it, and it makes a big difference in women's lives because it's like taking a college class. It's getting a master's degree in men.
Yes.
And you never unlearn. Once you know that, you never unlearn it. It's yours.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like Eckhart Tolle says, once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. So same.
Which one of his books said that?
New Earth. Okay. Yeah. Great book. Another thing, I know you've given so much advice, but if there's just one thing that women could do after listening to this right now to really improve their connections, their love life, what's your favorite, most impactful thing you could share?
Oh, gosh.
I know.
One thing that I could tell women to improve their love life, there's different advice if you're single, and there's different advice if you're taken.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe one for our single ladies and one for our taken ladies.
Sure. If you're single, take action.
Great.
I've pulled my mailing list. I have a pretty big mailing list, and at any given time, 20% are in relationships, 40% are dating, and 40% are doing nothing.
Wow.
They're taking a break in finger quotes. And then, a hiatus.
Hiatus.
My sister coined that. Right? But that's a lot of people who are licking their wounds and healing and studying and focusing on their work or their travel or their yoga practice. And what they're not doing is looking for love. Right? And objectively, it is easier to find love now than it will be in 1 year, and it will be in 5 years. And that's just the way it works. Mm. You never have more power than you do in this very moment.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of people who read and study, like people who are on my list for years and years and years, never bought a product, never got any coaching. God bless them. The difference is taking action. So it's New Year's Eve, and my resolution is to lose 10 pounds. Get your ass to the gym, get yourself a personal trainer, take it seriously.
Yeah. Don't
just read, Women's Health and the 6 tips on abs.
Right.
I think that's going to do the difference.
Well, so what would you say are a few really good ways for a single woman to take action?
Oh, it's more self-aggrandizing than I want you to be.
Yeah.
Go to evanmarckatz.com. Give me your email address. I will send you.
Yes, you will.
I will send you free dating and relationship.
Guys,
everything.
you've got badass content. It's
like
so
1,400 blog posts and 100 podcasts and like more than you need. So do something.
Their cup runneth over.
Yes, do something empowering and proactive, right? Instead of waiting, right? The myth that love happens when you least expect it. It does not, any more than a new job happens when you least expect it.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, a recruiter's going to fall through the chimney.
Yeah.
No, you got to go and make that happen. And I think people take a very passive approach based on wishful thinking and fear and Hollywood, whatever it is that. I may only go on one date this year, but it'll be with a cute guy that I met in real life, and I'm not going to go online. I'm not going to redo my profile.
I have that friend, and I'm like, oh, girl, it's going to take you so long.
I just don't believe in passive approaches to anything.
Me neither.
Right?
You want to create your life by design and not by default.
Yeah. So for single people, do something.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't have to be with me. Just do something.
Yeah.
And for people who are in a relationship, this is you know how women talk about their ideal guy?
Yeah.
And it usually comes out, you can have a dozen different women in a dozen different cultures, and you're always going to end up with the nice guy with edge.
Yeah.
That's pretty much like sort of the standard bearer for what women are looking for. I call him the nice guy with balls. Right. I think women should be the cool girl with boundaries.
Cool.
Right. And it's a concept that people tend to misinterpret, and that's why I want to spend just a half a second on it before we close.
You and I don't spend a half a second on anything, Evan.
But the nice guy with balls, he's everybody, like there's the bad boy who's really attractive, but he's a jerk. He's selfish. He doesn't care about your needs. He's not sensitive to you. You're attracted to him despite the fact that he's not very good to you. And then there's a nice guy who has virtually no opinions, doesn't stand up for himself, doesn't lead a life with passion.
That one.
Right. Puts you up on a pedestal.
Yep.
Right. And there's no attraction or respect for that guy.
Yes.
So the answer is between those guys. Right? People think it's an either or. Oh, there's only jerks or there's only boring guys. And
so interesting belief.
Yeah. You keep on dating until you find the guy in the middle. That's where the 7 chemistry comes from.
Yeah.
The guy in the middle.
Yeah.
There's a similar thing for women, where great relationships are about giving the other partner what they need.
Yeah.
Right? It can't just be about what you want. And most of us don't take too much time. Men certainly don't take any time to think about what women need. Women don't spend much time thinking about what men need either. They're more curious about what makes men tick, to be fair. That's why I give advice to women, not men. Men are pretty useless in that regard.
Yeah.
Right, sorry, guys. But paying attention to what my partner needs and being a yes person in a relationship is so very powerful. And sometimes we get into the idea of having boundaries. I've had guys steamroll me before. I've been the doormat, so that's never happening again. You set boundaries and you say no to a lot of things, and suddenly everything in the relationship becomes a fight. So I think of the relationship I have with my wife, and we're like a 95%, 96, 7% yes couple.
Yeah.
Right? Everything is yes. My wife is like, hey, could I go to the Four Seasons for a day by myself without you and the kids? And I was like, I'm not going to enjoy that very much, but okay, sure.
Yeah.
You're like, and I was like, hey, I know we haven't spent much time together this week, but I got invited to go to this poker game, and I really want to get to know these guys. And then I got plans with Erin on Sunday night because we haven't seen each other in a while. She's, yes. So it's just there's tons of freedom within the relationship, and acceptance within the relationship, but where people can get their needs met. And what most men never ever get from women, even great women, is that feeling of being accepted and embraced. It's always, again, the stereotype of you're great, but you need to change this and this and this. You need to lose weight. You need to do this. And so there's this constant nitpicking at men's flaws instead of just embracing him for all that he is and really accept, appreciate, admire. Right? And you're the only relationship he gets that from. He doesn't get it from his guy friends. They cut him down. He doesn't get it from work. Work doesn't work like that. The only place he can get acceptance, appreciation, and admiration is from you. So if you want to really be a great girlfriend and wife, accept, appreciate, admire, and say yes. And the more you do that, and I have women be like, oh, so I'm just supposed to be nicer to some jerk off? No, if he's a jerk off, you shouldn't date him.
Don't date him, yeah.
So for a good guy,
yeah.
You want to make the relationship better, be a better girlfriend, you will get a better man in return.
Yes.
Right? The rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah.
And too many people kind of keep score and focus on their partner's flaws.
Yeah.
And I'm saying shift that to focus on what's great about him. Make him feel better about. My wife wrote me a Valentine's Day card, and I get teary-eyed talking about my wife, but it's always, you're my hero. You've given me this life that I couldn't have imagined as a little girl. Who wouldn't want to hear that?
Yeah. Yeah. She's an amazing woman, your wife. Every time you talk about her, I'm like, who is this magic fairy
but she gets
floating
it.
around the planet?
But she gets it.
Yes.
So I will do anything for her.
Yeah.
Because she makes me feel that my efforts are appreciated.
Yes. Appreciation. I think one of the biggest mistakes I'm noticing in all relationships is making it so much about you that, why would the other person be inspired to
Nobody
collaborate?
thinks about that because it's too painful.
Yeah.
I've had amazing women on the phone, and I'll say, the first phone call before we start coaching, what makes you a great girlfriend?
Yep.
Silence, crickets.
Yes.
Never thought about it. And these are ostensibly good people. Just they don't define themselves. I'm a lawyer. I speak 3 languages. I have a second home in Aspen. What wouldn't? I'm in great shape. Why wouldn't I? Yes. What do you do for him?
Yeah.
Nothing. No, really. And I think, so this is the work that we have to do. We have to yes, make you choose better guys who treat you better. That's point A, is to find a better man. And when you have that better man, how are you going to show up differently? That's going to make this guy say, I'd be crazy to ever go anywhere else.
Yes. And final question. What is a question that maybe I should be asking you that I haven't thought to?
That's a trick question to throw me.
That's what happens when Jay Abraham is your mentor and he teaches you to ask these questions to people.
You think he's speaking in traffic and conversion?
Yeah. He's I know he coaches Tony Robbins and David John and coaches me a little, and he always tells me, this is the question you need to ask people, Ashley. No questions asked. I put it on my list.
Certainly greatness by association.
Yeah.
What's a question that I would want to be asked that I don't get asked? I did a podcast with a guy named AJ Mirzad, who took everything in a really, really different direction. He does a podcast for coaches, like Super Business Coach or something like that. And it was so delightful because we didn't focus so much on business. We didn't focus so much on love and philosophy. It was more like personal. It felt like more like a conversation at a bar after a late night of drinking. And I remember him asking.
It was the best conversation.
Yeah, it was like something to the effect of, what would you want your legacy to be, or something like that.
Yeah.
It was just bigger and deeper. And sometimes a very narrow question is a good one. You ask a specific question, get a specific answer. But he gave me something that was my curveball. And I really got to contemplate that and who I want to be, and the values that show up in your business and in your life and how you treat others. And so I feel like things get lost when you have a public image and you market. And I know I've read enough about me on the internet to know how people perceive me, and I can't always control that.
Yeah, I get it.
But if I wanted people to really know something about me, it would be that my ethics and my moral compass is probably my greatest value.
Great.
That I'm very committed to doing the right thing in every situation, and not because it's popular. I'm more concerned with being, as I said, a good husband and a good father than a successful business person. And yet I'm committed to always optimizing and saying, what could I do better? Mm-hmm. My wife even said it in our wedding vows. Right? Like I read books on how to be a better father. I read books on how to be a better husband. If there's room for improvement, I'm always going to look for it. But that doesn't always make me the happiest person. Doesn't always make me the easiest person to be around, because I'm an optimizer. Yes. Right?
What a beautiful thing you haven't projected that onto your wife, and that you're in such acceptance of her versus.
But that's the internal battle.
Yeah.
Right. Is she's content. She's a satisficer. This is from Barry Schwartz's Paradox of Choice. She's happy with everything. She mentally lives in Disneyland. Everything's great.
Good for her. I like it.
Right. She's like Legos. Everything is awesome.
Yes.
I'm wired differently, and it's a blessing and it's a curse. But
a bit of neurosis.
But the core concept is I'm always going to do the right thing. I'm always going to do the ethical thing. And honesty is the core value. And so sometimes that will come across as tactless, and sometimes that'll come across as abrasive, because I can't tolerate lying.
Yeah.
I can't do it. And when people give advice that rings untrue, that's unhealthy, I'll say something. And then I say something, and then I end up making enemies.
Yeah.
Like it's part of why, again, not to get too political, why I have so much trouble with the current political climate.
Yeah.
Is sort of the assault on truth.
Yeah.
I'm so committed to the truth.
Well, political always.
But when there's not truth, when we can't even argue in good faith, we can't even argue about the same set of facts.
Yeah.
It really upsets me. So I'm just really grateful that I have an audience who's also committed to truth, and I've got a wife who's committed to truth, and we can listen to each other and have differences and respect each other.
Right.
And I feel from that you can do almost anything in life when you're starting with a baseline of integrity and truth. Then it just becomes a matter of making choices that make you happy.
Yeah.
But if you're not starting with that, you're starting on false premises.
Yeah.
And I think there's just too much bullshit out there.
Yeah.
And
I think that's why people are lonely, is because they start on a premise that they're not being honest with themselves about who they are and what they want, and they create a life from that, and then they wake up and they're like, what is this life?
Yeah, they married the wrong person because that person looked good on paper, and they took the job that their family expected them to, or the thing they were good at, but it doesn't bring them any joy. And then there's a lot of things to undo and tear down. And for as much as you and I have talked about changes that we could respectively make in our lives, I feel like I'm always kind of pointing in the right direction, and if something doesn't feel in my gut, I'm gonna find my way.
Correct.
And that's what I always try to do with clients, is help use that compass that I have internally to help them choose men of kindness and consistency and integrity.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. Remind everybody where they can find you.
My name is Evan Marc Katz. I'm a dating coach for smart, strong, successful women. My website is www.evanmarckatz, EvanMarckatz.com. And give me your email address. I will give you the world.
You guys, he really will give you the world. He will blast you with only the best content. So I'm so excited for what's to come for everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so flattered to be here, especially since you are great and associated with greatness.
Oh.
Hey there. So I'm just reflecting on this episode with Evan Marc Katz, and what a genius he is in the world of dating. I mean, there are very few dating coaches out there where I've read their advice and it just feels so much like common sense. And one of the things that really stood out to me in this conversation with him was around attraction. And he talked about, what you're attracted to versus what you actually just put up with. I think that there's been a lot of times, especially in my world, in the personal development or spiritual communities, where people will say, wow, you're attracting a lot of business opportunities that have this issue, or wow, you're attracting a lot of men who are behaving like that. And I love the reframe that Evan Marc Katz offers here, is that it's not like you're always just attracting things. What it really is you're putting up with them. You're willing to handle and deal with them. There are certain people in the world who just don't deal with certain things that you might be willing to deal with. And for that reason, their lives look wildly different. And this kind of brings me also to a conversation that I had with some friends the other day, where we were talking about finding the right person. And throughout the conversation, a couple of my girlfriends kept saying, I just want to find the right person. And I interrupted them, and I just said, don't you think that it's not so much about finding the right person as it is about saying no to the wrong person? And if you really think about this, how many people do you know in your life who are accepting mediocrity, whether it's in their career or their relationship? And that mediocrity that they're sitting in takes up a lot of their time. It takes up a lot of their energy. They're making a lot of space for it. They're allowing it in. They're welcoming it in. And because they're so occupied in the mediocrity, they don't make space for what's great and for the greatness that's available to them. And in that sense, how can they ever achieve or access greatness when they're so busy being preoccupied and committed to mediocrity? So I think that really what I got out of this conversation with Evan Marc Katz is that it's not just about what you're attracting into your life, it's about what you're willing to put up with in your life. And if you want to find the right person or the right job or the right anything, I don't think it's so much about saying you need to find the right thing. I think it's about knowing what to let go of, knowing what to say no to, so that you have the spaciousness and the emotional availability and the physical availability and the time availability for the right to come by. And in that sense, your radar is available for the right thing to come by. So that really, really struck me in my conversation with him. And if you're, sitting here listening to me and maybe you're thinking, well, I don't think I'm in the best relationship, or I don't think I'm having, the best career right now, I want to ask you, what's keeping you there? What belief system are you buying into in your mind right now? What are you telling yourself that's keeping you in the job you're in or keeping you in the relationship you're in? Maybe you're in scarcity. Maybe you're telling yourself there's no other jobs out there for you, or there's no other relationships or people out there that make sense for you. Maybe you're telling yourself, you're in scarcity about your age. I'm too old to start over. Or maybe you're in scarcity about, you have a whole story about how it's too late. You've put in too much, or maybe you believe you put in too much time. You've gone through medical school or law school, and now you're really using that story to keep you from making a change because you feel like you owe it to yourself to sit through something you hate only because of all the time you put into making that, to getting into that destination. So this reminds me a lot of a quote, which is that, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's something to the extent that you don't want to cling to a mistake just because you spent a lot of time making it. The only thing I don't resonate with this quote is I don't think anything is really a mistake. I think we learn and we grow and we ascend from everything if we choose to use it as a growing tool, if we choose to step away from everything and say, what are we supposed to learn from this? But at the same time, why are you clinging to something just because of the time you put in to being with it? Why are you staying somewhere? Ask yourself, what are you believing that's keeping you there? That awareness is everything. And the second thing that I really love that Evan Marc Katz talked about, amongst many things, he's a friend and I find him really inspiring and insightful. And we have a lot of the same quirks, so he's just nothing but a good time. But what I really love that he talks about is when you look at things in your life, and it could be a partnership, it could be a job, and a lot of people, like he said, they focus too much on what's attractive versus what's important. And I think that, like always, your career could be compared to your relationships. So, for example, let's take relationships. You focus on what's attractive. I know so many women who want to date resumes. They want to date men who have the perfect resume, but at the end of the day, that resume and what that list is on paper might not show what's important. Are they the kind of person that's going to be honest with you? Are they going to have your back? Are they going to be helpful? Are they going to be supportive? Are they going to speak kindly to you? These are the things that are in between the lines. These are the things that you learn in the in-between moments. And so I really learned a lot just listening to Evan Marc Katz talk about this. And I was really inspired to look at it not just in my love life, but also in my career. Because I think there's so many things, and I've coached countless job seekers, professional women who are trying to find their purpose, business owners who are trying to launch their business. And one thing I find is that often they are focused in their career on what's attractive versus what's actually important. And what you can do when it comes to your career, if you want to get clear on what's important, is you're going to want to start to think about what are your core values. What are your top 5 non-negotiable core values? We'll include the link in the episode notes for that, for you to be able to access it. But really asking yourself, what are your core values? So that you can use those as the key ingredients, because those are really the core of who you are. In my case, my core values are growth, family, balance, authenticity, service. These are all key ingredients to who I am, and no matter how sexy or attractive anything looks on paper, if they don't tie into those values, I always know I'm not going to be happy with it. So I hope that this wisdom from Evan Marc Katz, from me, just supports you. I'd love to hear from you, and I can't wait to talk to you in the next episode. Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of the U-Turn Podcast. You can find all of the resources that our guest mentioned on our show notes at uturnpodcast.com. That's YOUTURN podcast.com. Also, don't forget, on the website, we've got our 4 free e-courses, whether you want to land a new job you love, get clarity on the best career path for you, launch your dream business, or deepen your romantic relationships. I'll talk to you soon. Can't wait to connect on next week's episode.